Yeah, hi folks. Now today I want to cover Three Waters, our corrupt media and the Tauranga by-election. And I'll start off with the by-election where former councillor Andrew Hollis of the New Nation Party is running, along with Sue Gray of the Outdoors Party and Alan Kaywood of the One Party.
Each have a range of values and policies, but they're united by COVID-19. Do you consider yourself part of that anti-mandate movement?
Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt.
Do you believe in the COVID-19 vaccine?
No, I don't support the COVID-19 vaccine at all.
Behind National, Labour and ACT, Hollis, Gray and Kaywood are next in line, together accounting for more than 9% in our exclusive poll of Tauranga voters.
Now that's higher than ACT.
But the trio believe they can do better, and our poll shows there could be room for more support. We asked voters, you will recall the anti-mandate protests outside Parliament. Would you consider voting for a party that supports those views? 2/3 of Tauranga voters said no, but more than 20% said yes. Would you vote for a candidate who supported those protests? Yes.
I don't think I would have supported them. I supported the mandates 100%.
And now those parties are considering joining forces to run together in next year's general election.
And we've had a couple of meetings or several meetings about that.
Yeah, the problem is this. She's crazy. Look at her eyes. She's another greeny nutter.
But in behind the scenes, we are talking extremely heavily.
For us to be able to get into Parliament as individuals, we're not going to make it. We need to unite.
Life isn't easy for a minor party. A campaign event for Hollis on Wednesday took place in a mostly empty room.
The one and only Andrew Hollis.
But the parties claim to be gaining attention.
We are pulling some very good donations through.
And with that comes greater scrutiny. Gray in particular has come under fire for false claims about COVID-19. Should politicians always tell the truth?
Of course.
Do you believe that everything that you've said about COVID-19 is true?
I believe so. I don't think I've said anything that's not true.
You said extending the vaccine rollout to teenagers was, quote, government-mandated genocide. What's your evidence for that?
Genocide is an unwanted death. Why would you...
More than one. How many deaths do you think there have been?
Well, in New Zealand there's close to 500 post-vaccine deaths. And that's on the People's Register that's been very carefully followed through. There's been quite a lot of information about that from doctors and other people.
3 deaths in New Zealand have been linked to the vaccine. 3.
Nearly 500 deaths have followed the vaccine.
160 deaths have been recorded in New Zealand within 28 days of a COVID vaccination. All are investigated by National Drug Safety Authority, MedSafe.
Now, YouTube won't let me talk about that.
And after more than 10 million doses, only 3 deaths have been linked to the vaccine. Kaywood is promoting unproven treatments.
There's medications like the ivermectin and the hydroxychloroquine and those sort of products that actually work.
Health experts say there's no evidence for ivermectin being a cure for COVID-19. What is your evidence for that?
My wife and I had COVID, and we took some ivermectin that we had in our drug cabinet. We took it, and within 4 or 5 days we were back up again.
According to MedSafe, there's no evidence to support the use of ivermectin for treatment or prevention of COVID-19.
Now, again, I can't talk about that.
But this campaign is about more than COVID. The parties share a range of other theories too.
And this government is in focus and just looking after themselves. And I believe that they've got an agenda. They've absolutely got an agenda.
What do you mean by that? What is their agenda?
Well, if you go and have a look at Jacinda Ardern herself, she's a student from the World Economic Forum. Her photograph is there. So I believe that there's something going on in there with the United Nations.
There are people who believe the United Nations and the World Economic Forum control the world. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yep. Now, of the three, that guy is leading, so let's have a look at his party's policies. So we have the New Nation Party, which I think started out being the New National Party. Protect the rights and freedoms of Kiwis. Now that mainly seems to cover the COVID lockdowns and mandates, etc. Leave the United Nations. Excellent. It's about time we started seeing that. Repeal Three Waters. Excellent again. Now, Peter Williams did a great speech about that in the South Island a few days ago.
I'm here today representing the Taxpayers Union. I'm not a member of any political party. I may have once been in the media. I am no longer. I never will be again, I don't think, for three reasons: my age, my race, and my gender. And the fact that in my last job as a radio talkback host, I was not afraid to criticise and question government policy, not just on the issue in front of us today, but on other fronts as well. When the government becomes not just the biggest single advertiser in the commercial media through the Ministry of Health, as well as making direct cash contributions to large commercial media organisations like the New Zealand Herald, Stuff and MediaWorks, then you know full well we have a very serious issue in this country, and that is a media which is literally bought and paid for. And don't let anyone tell you any different.
So true. Anyway, I'll just fast forward a bit.
So the 4 water entities have been set up, and even though the government has told us the local authorities will have ownership of the infrastructure, they will have no real say on how services are delivered in their area. So who will be making the decisions? Let me tell you how these water entities will be run. For a start, each water entity will have a regional representation group. There'll be 12 people on these groups. 6 of the 12 will be appointed, presumably by the government, from the local councils. Now, in this area, your council will be one of 20 local authorities merged into Entity D. The councils will have 6 people on the regional representation group, and there is no guarantee that somebody from your local council here will be one of those 6. The other 6 members of that RRG, that regional representation group, will be iwi representatives, presumably in this part of the country appointed by Ngāi Tahu. Then, in a crazily convoluted setup, the regional representation group will appoint and monitor an independent selection panel, which will in turn appoint and monitor the boards of directors at each of these water entities. Are you confused? I think you're supposed to be. Oh, and in a last-minute sop to local concerns, the minister in charge of all this, Nanaia Mahuta, says we will now have sub-regional advisory panels to the regional representation group, which is, of course, yet another layer of bureaucracy. Does that make it 4 or 5? But the kicker is that these sub-regional advisory panels also must be a mix of local council and iwi appointments. In other words, yet more co-governance. And just so that you can have no doubt about what is the most important qualification to be a board of director on each of these water entities, the Cabinet, following Nanaia Mahuta's lead, has decreed that the board must have, quote, general collective competence in understanding the principles of the treaty and Mataranga Māori, Tikanga Māori and Te Ao Māori, and include members with specific expertise of Mataranga Māori, Tikanga Māori, Kaitiangitanga and Te Ao Māori with respect to the delivery of water services. Now, I don't know about you, but it seems that knowledge of Maori myths and the Maori worldview is a far more important qualification for membership of these water entity boards than knowledge of, say, engineering and finance. Because if we do need to spend billions of dollars upgrading our water infrastructure across the country, wouldn't engineering and financial skills be the most important disciplines that prospective directors should have? And not only will iwi have 6 out of 12 members on each of these regional representation groups, any decision the groups make must pass with a 75% majority.
So in other words, Maori will control all water, which means they will own it. No tax on first 25,000 of income. Now that's a new Conservative policy. Oil and gas exploration to resume immediately. Excellent. Repeal Hipurpua. We are one nation, one people. Excellent. Law and order. Now in this they mainly talk about increasing the number of police. Strengthen provincial autonomy. Good. Less centralised control. No state funding of media. Excellent. Again. And here's one reason why.
All right, and I guess too, and we're having this conversation now because I'm not getting from people, and I am active on social media, and there's a media platform here. I get the feeling that often, Paul, the anger is not at the name itself or the fact that it's Māori or has a Māori derivation. It's that people don't feel they have been asked. They feel that insidiously the name of their country is being changed without any reference to them. And I must admit, I look at state media and I guess what I would call woke mainstream media, and they do seem to have made editorial policies and decisions that these names become interoperable. Do you think there is a justification to be concerned that this has happened without the consensus of the general populace, or not as a response to a change in general usage, but in response to an ideological or political drive?
Well, one of the things that happens that the media is capable of doing is leading public opinion, and so they can introduce things like this and people gradually...
Should the media lead public opinion, or should it reflect it?
The answer is obvious. It should reflect it.
Well, that's an answer for journalists, I'm not sure.
That's an answer for journalists, he says. No, it's not. Their job is to report facts and not be political propagandists.
Reporter.
Yeah, well, I would hope that they confine themselves to report what's happening, but those days have gone long ago.
Those days have gone long ago, he says, and he seems quite okay with it. Now, this guy cannot be trusted with the truth, and he's educating students about Maori history. Now, this clip is about the cannibalisation of the Petapai Arahi, the people of European descent who lived in New Zealand before the Maori arrived.
And they counted these skulls in each sack, and they estimated at least 60,000 skeletons were recovered from just this one region. And fortunately, they didn't get them all. There's a couple of caves with these fellows in Turiho. The coffin's about 5 foot long, made out of New Zealand kauri.
And do you have any of these skeletons?
Oh, no. No, I've...
They have to go somewhere?
No, I've just left them where they are. Well, I'll tell you what happened. Dr. Paul Moon of Auckland University fame was doing a book some years ago, This Horrible Practice, about cannibalism. I didn't know him from a bar of soap. He got hold of me and says, "Oh, Noel, can you show me some of these cannibal sites, the remains of these cannibal sites?" So rather than bring him up around this area here over the east coast, north of Wongaree, there's a number of sites that I knew of, so I took him up to one of those. And he was a great excited photograph and what have you, and then he found they weren't Maori bones, he wasn't very much interested. And the next night on New Zealand television, here he was there with his mates, gathering all the bones up, stuffing them in plastic bags. They went down the road somewhere, dug a hole and threw them in there. Well, the Maori don't treat,
That's not how they treat their dead.
No. And so Dr. Paul Moon got the message from me and...
Yeah, the guy tried to cover it all up. Now folks, New Zealand is stuffed. We cannot survive this radical agenda that's going on right now. And these minor parties have some great ideas, but they've got to get their act together. And maybe a collective is the only way.